Rain-slicked streets reflected the gray sky above, but she barely noticed. Her small hands gripped a battered basket of roses, marigolds, and wildflowers she had carefully gathered at dawn. Each step along the uneven cobblestones was measured, careful, and despite the chill cutting through her thin shawl, her gaze remained steady. "Buy a flower, please," she whispered to passers-by, her voice barely audible over the din of city life. A sharp laugh cut through the morning air. A man pointing and jeering. "Street kid, what are you doing here? Go home and cry." Her heart clenched, but she did not falter. She could not. She had a purpose far larger than the jeers of strangers. Every coin she earned brought her closer to a dream that no mockery could touch. Every petal she sold carried the weight of her future. Even as people turned away, their eyes a mixture of disdain and indifference, she held herself straight, shoulders squared, head lifted. The world did not yet see her, but one day it would. Her name was Anika, and she had learned early that the world was often cold and unyielding. Born in a small village where dreams were luxuries few could afford, she had watched her mother toil under the sun, her fingers raw and cracked from endless work, her father long gone. The scent of wet earth after rain, the smell of freshly baked bread from the tiny corner bakery, the chatter of villagers in the square. They were memories stitched together with both warmth and longing. But hunger was a constant companion, gnawing at her belly and whispering that life demanded more than innocence could offer. When Anika was 8, she had begged her mother to let her help at the market. She remembered the way the morning sun fell on the dusty stalls, how the wind carried the sharp tang of spices and the sweetness of ripe fruit. It was there she discovered flowers, small and fragile, yet radiant. Their colors spoke of life even in the harshest surroundings. She realized she could sell them, help her mother, and maybe, just maybe, carve a path beyond the narrow limits of her village. But life, as always, tested her resolve. By the time she was 12, the city had swallowed her family. Her mother's health failed under the strain of relentless labor, leaving Anika to navigate a world far harsher than the village she remembered. The streets became her classroom, her market, her battlefield. Each day, she learned the delicate art of persuasion, the rhythm of human behavior, the subtle power of patience. And always, in the back of her mind, the dream. A small room filled with books, a uniform that smelled faintly of antiseptic, the soft hum of a clinic, and the possibility of healing others. But the streets were unkind to dreamers. Every morning brought new jeers, new scoffs, new reminders that she was just a street girl. Boys would throw stones near her feet. Men would mock her attempts at selling, and women would shake their heads in disapproval. "Why doesn't she just stay home?" they would whisper. Anika absorbed it all, not because she was fearless, but because she understood that anger was a luxury she could not afford. Her silence became her shield. She learned to smile politely, to keep walking, to ignore the echoes of disrespect bouncing off wet walls. There were moments when the weight of it all threatened to break her. Nights when the cold seeped through her thin blankets, when hunger made her dizzy, when tears slipped quietly down her cheeks. She would stare at the ceiling, tracing the patterns of cracks and shadows, and silently repeat to herself, "This will pass. I will rise." Her resilience did not go unnoticed. A teacher at a local community center saw her struggling with textbooks donated from previous years. Anika had no proper desk, no quiet room, only the chaos of street life pressing against her mind. Yet she absorbed lessons like parched soil drinks rain. Numbers, words, human anatomy, all became tools for a future no one yet believed she could claim. The city, however, never forgave ambition lightly. One afternoon, as Anika arranged a small bouquet on a street corner, a man approached, sneering. "Why are you bothering people with flowers? You're wasting your time. Nobody respects street kids." His words hit like stones, yet she stood still. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of holding composure. Around her, Pedestrians glanced, some curious, some indifferent, none intervening. The silence was deafening. And yet, in that silence, a quiet defiance grew. Every mocking word fueled her determination. Every dismissive look sharpened her resolve. She began to understand that dignity was not given, it was claimed. That strength was measured not by loud protests, but by endurance, by the courage to continue when the world demanded surrender. It was in these moments that Anika discovered her own invisible network. Fellow street vendors, a kind shopkeeper who shared leftover bread, a retired doctor who offered tutoring in exchange for simple chores. They became the hidden pillars supporting her ascent. The city's cruelty was vast, but so was the potential for unseen allies. And she learned to watch for them, to sense their gestures, their small nods of encouragement, their quiet belief in her worth. Years passed. Each flower sold, each coin saved, each lesson absorbed, brought Anika closer to her dream. High school was a battlefield of its own. Students from wealthier neighborhoods whispered behind her back. Teachers occasionally doubted her capacity. The library's second-hand books smelled of dust and forgotten stories. But she persisted, walking miles every day to attend classes, often arriving with bruised feet, aching shoulders, and a mind ablaze with ambition. By 18, she had achieved what many considered impossible. She earned a scholarship to a medical college. The same people who once mocked her walked past, now staring with a mixture of disbelief and reluctant admiration. Yet she remained silent, understanding that the loudest victories were spoken not in words, but in the quiet demonstration of competence, compassion, and unshakable resolve. In the hospital corridors, Anika moved with the grace of someone who had mastered both humility and purpose. She treated patients with meticulous care, her hands steady despite the memories of her own hardships. Elderly patients would smile softly at her. Children would cling briefly to her coat for reassurance, and fellow doctors began to notice the subtle brilliance in her diagnostic skills. She did not boast. She simply worked, letting her results speak louder than any self-promotion ever could. And then came the day that symbolized the full arc of her journey. A prominent donor visited the hospital, questioning the young doctor standing at the forefront of an emergency ward. Doubts crept into the air, subtle at first, then sharp. Yet when a critical case arrived, a child with severe complications, Anika acted. She coordinated with nurses, assessed the situation with precision, and intervened in a manner that saved the boy's life. Witnesses later recalled the donor standing silently, watching her move with calm authority, the very embodiment of competence tempered with empathy. It was not dramatic words that won respect, but the quiet proof of ability. Colleagues began to call her name with reverence. Patients requested her care without hesitation, and even those who once mocked her could not ignore the undeniable truth. She had transformed struggle into success, mockery into mastery, and silence into power. Iconic lines from her journey spread quietly through the hospital corridors. Dignity is not given, it is carried like a flower through the storms. Strength is measured not in loud declarations, but in the courage to continue. Every struggle is a seed. Plant it wisely, and it will bloom. These words were not forced slogans. They were lived experiences, etched in the lines of her face, the calm of her movements, the unwavering gaze she cast at every challenge. The ultimate payoff came during a ceremony honoring medical achievers from underprivileged backgrounds. Anika stood on stage, the bouquet she once sold in her hands, now symbolic of life, hope, and perseverance. Crowds rose to their feet, clapping, some with tears glistening in their eyes. She remembered the street corners, the jeers, the long nights of study, the tiny victories over hunger and doubt. The silence that once crushed her now amplified her triumph. The moral injustice had been reversed, not through vengeance, but through integrity, relentless effort, and the quiet accumulation of skill and heart. In the aftermath, Anika returned to the streets, not to sell flowers, but to teach. Small groups of children followed her, eyes wide with wonder as she spoke of dreams, persistence, and unseen power. She shared her story without embellishment, letting the weight of truth and the resonance of lived experience speak. She often paused near familiar street corners, the air smelling faintly of rain and blossoms. Even in the harshest places, she would tell the children, strength grows quietly. Respect yourself, work tirelessly, and let your deeds bloom where the world can finally see. Her journey became a testament not to fame, but to the extraordinary potential hidden in ordinary places. The girl who once carried baskets of flowers now carried the hopes of an entire generation. Struggle had shaped her, adversity had honed her, and through it all, she had learned that success was not simply about reaching a goal. It was about transforming every hardship into a step toward dignity. So now, as you watch this story, remember Anika. Think of the quiet heroes in your own life, the ones whose struggles go unseen, whose efforts are met with indifference, yet whose courage shapes the world in ways we often overlook. Take a moment to honor them, to reflect on the strength of silence, the power of perseverance, and the unshakable truth that struggle can, and often does, create success. Wherever you are watching from, leave a comment and share your thoughts. Celebrate those who fight quietly and rise spectacularly. And subscribe for more stories that honor true heroes, the ones who remind us that dignity, courage, and persistence are timeless virtues.